Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with what I believe is our third episode of Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm Zack England, happy to introduce a longtime friend of mine who really needs no introduction in Chattanooga, David Martin, more affectionately known as D-Mart. David, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me in here today.
Thank you for being a team player.
Yeah.
And when I started this podcast or thought about the idea of the podcast, I knew that you would be one of the primary targets early on, just because of what you do, who you are, and just your ties to the community. So very excited for this, and I don't think we will hurt for content whatsoever.
Well, I'm gonna listen to that intro whenever I'm having a bad day. So thank you for that. Yeah,
absolutely. So I'll let you kind of do most of the introduction for yourself.
Ooh.
You came to Chattanooga. We've established back in 1999.
Yep.
Not to date yourself, for undergrad, and just couldn't get away. Is that a fair statement?
Pretty close. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I grew up in Knoxville, and my father's side of the family is from northern Hamilton County. So my dad grew up in Sale Creek. So I spent a lot of time coming down here in the summers, and of course, holidays, visiting family in the Sale Creek area. Mowbray Mountain, kind of that part of Hamilton County.
I did not know that.
Yeah. And so, whenever we'd come down for, a week or so to stay with my grandmother, we'd always have, after a while, they'd be like, all right, we got to go to Chattanooga to do something. So take us to baseball games at Ingle Stadium. Chattanooga, obviously in the 80s, a much different creature than it is now, or even when I came back in 99. But, grew up in Knoxville, and when I was deciding where I wanted to go to school, and I loved, obviously, Knoxville, big, UT fan, but wanted to see what else was out there, and kind of had a little bit of familiarity with Chattanooga, and so came down here. And 99 was a really interesting time to come to Chattanooga, because there was a lot of good energy at that time. It was I always say it was the Renaissance, right? The beginning of the Renaissance phase of Chattanooga. I call it the window dressing phase. It was the first year they had the baseball stadium on Hawk Hill.
Yeah.
The walking bridge has just been open. Coolidge Park had just been open. The aquarium had only been open for a couple of years. So there's like a lot of good energy in Chattanooga. Countering to Knoxville at the time, I said at that point, like, Knoxville kind of felt like it was resting on its big orange laurels. Now, that's not the case now. Knoxville's got a lot of good mojo going on, but there was some good energy in Chattanooga, and I loved it. And except for going away for grad school after undergrad, I've been here the whole time.
Yeah, I was not putting together the Lookout Stadium and the time frame, because I remember going to that opening game where George Bush won throughout the first pitch.
Yeah.
You had Griffey and the Orioles and the Reds. And I remember I was telling somebody they were blasting the gin blossoms like in between innings, and everybody was just rocking out. I'm thinking I was a high school junior, so I thought that was
which is
cool.
Now qualifies as classic rock.
That's exactly it. So that was, and I still remember being young enough to wear downtown and Jack's Alley and the Rhythm and Brews and the Attic, places I couldn't get into, at least legally, were coming up, and downtown was really starting to be cool, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. And it's been awesome to be here. Like, honestly, I think that I've been able to craft a life for myself in Chattanooga that I don't think I would have been able to do in many other places. It's just a great community, and it's a beautiful place. So
yeah, it's funny you mentioned the comparison of Chattanooga and Knoxville, because I was a kind of a Chattanooga critic when I came back from law school in 2008. And it was really just, I think, me being, as I've mentioned before, just immature. I know that's hard to believe. And also just kind of on my high horse, where I was coming from a bigger town back to Chattanooga, but not recognizing the growth and development that we had. And then I think I focused that frustration and critique onto Knoxville after, because I'm a huge UT sports fan. I tell people, UT football ruined my life for at least 20 years, if not more. I want to start a class action against what they stole from me, but I am stuck with them, win, lose, or draw. But you're right. Knoxville has, I think, caught up to some degree, or at least made efforts to develop their, riverfront and
downtown
all
area,
other things. So, I think Chattanooga is still leading the charge first and foremost on that. And so, knowing that I doing legal work and been in the legal space since I left UTC. You actually, I think, had an earlier start.
Yeah.
In the legal world that I was not exposed to, because as when we met, you were, correct me if I'm wrong, you were a runner for a law firm when we first met.
Yes.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
I've always been trying to figure out when this actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So my father was an attorney.
Right.
So and that's why I grew up in Knoxville. So he did grad school or law school in Knoxville and pretty much stayed there.
Yeah. He did divorce work.
He did divorce
high
work.
profile.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Very
Yeah.
very high profile.
Yeah.
Family attorney. And so, obviously growing up, I was thinking, well, maybe I'll just be a comms major and then I'll go to law school and then I'll join up with dad. He was always, he was very great about, well, you need to have the experience first. And if, you actually like this and it's a temperamental match, that's the most important thing. Like you actually have to see yourself doing this every day. If it's a match, then we can talk about the academic side of it and getting into the actual field. And so he always encouraged me to take jobs that would get me close to it as much as possible. And so so we met when I was following his advice as a runner for a law firm here in Chattanooga.
I remember, I think at the time, I guess I was a freshman in college. I think I was doing inflatable games. I worked for a company that would go around and inflate those, big bouncy castles for birthday parties, which was fine. It was good experience. But I remember you saying I'm a runner for a law firm and thinking maybe I need to do that. Given what I wanted to do. Do you recall what law firm you were running for?
Gosh, no, I don't. I'd have to go back and really think about that. Yeah. And I'm not sure if I could even come up with it because that was, pre-iPhones, right?
That's right. Yeah. Pre a lot of things. So absolutely. So I ended up becoming a runner, I think, my junior year of school and never looked back. But that was one of my favorite jobs was, getting the freedom. Again, no iPhone, so I don't think anybody was really, could track where I was going or what I was doing. But, I was running to the courthouse and I was running to other providers and firms and doing a lot of what the type of law is what I do now. And so it was great, invaluable to know the bank tellers, know the court clerks, because you showed back up as an attorney, I don't know, whatever it was, 5-6 years later, and they remembered you. So hopefully, those relationships that I fostered kind of helped out on all the things that I messed up on as an early attorney, and good to have a court clerk in your corner when things needed to be corrected. I'll just say that. Yeah. And so you obviously made the right decision and didn't go to law school. So to kind of tell us what led you to what you're doing now.
So at some point, I kind of decided I was going to focus on teaching, right? And so I love history. And so I actually got a degree at UTC in teaching social sciences, social studies. And then from there, I went to Knoxville, and I was going to be Dr. Martin, PhD, the cool history professor.
Yeah. Were you going to go back to CAK where you went?
That wasn't in the plans,
okay.
But I wanted to. I thought like a life in higher academics, higher education, the university professor thing would be the way to go. And I realized very quickly when I was in Knoxville that there was a huge difference between being a trained academic historian committed to research at the higher education level and being like a history buff. And I was in the latter. Like I liked history. I enjoyed history. I loved learning history, but a life in academia doing research was just not going to be a good temperamental match for me for the rest of my life. So I finished a master's degree and stopped there.
You're in Knoxville during
I was
this time.
at Knoxville at this time. Really enjoyed doing my master's thesis. Was told it would have been a great, path for me to pursue forward for my doctoral research. But at that time, I was like, I'm done. So I actually kind of stayed in Knoxville, got that master's degree, a couple years of Arrested Development. But the whole time I was like, I want to get back to Chattanooga. But I didn't know exactly how to get back to Chattanooga. I didn't know what I wanted to do because by this time it was like I wasn't going to be a lawyer. I wasn't going to be a professor. what was I going to do? And so this was 2008, the economic sky is falling.
Yeah.
But I know I want to get back to Chattanooga. I'm applying for jobs long distance, which was a nightmare to do at that time. And I finally was just like, I had 3 months of savings built up in my bank account. And I was like, I'm just going to move to Chattanooga. And I'm going to, in 3 months, I'm going to find a job. And I got down to about a month left in my reserves of cash. And I got a job with a marketing firm here in town. Because one of the things that I learned how to do in grad school was to write. And they needed writers. And I said, I will take that job. I know nothing about marketing. I've never taken a class in it, nothing, but I know how to write, and you guys need writers. And that's actually how I got into the space that I'm in today.
Very cool. I didn't know that that timeline. I think I'd forgotten about the grad school run. And so you're back to Chattanooga. Where were you living at the time? Was it because the South Side was still trying to wake up?
No, I was at this time when I first moved back. I was out in East Brainerd.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, and so I started with this firm in the editorial department, actually writing, and then they were like, this guy likes to talk a bunch. We should move him into sales. And so they moved me into sales. I never sold anything in my life except for one time in college, I sold women's shoes at Dillard's at the mall. That was the extent of my sales experience. But my manager at the time was actually Jason Provancha, who runs Steam Logistics now.
Yeah, right down the street.
He and I actually have a history that goes back to Knoxville. He went to the same high school I did. He was friends with my older siblings. Okay. And so he got me into the sales game. And so I was I was outbound, I was outside sales, and my territory was Texas and everything around it. So this was before Chattanooga had like decent flights going in and out of Lovell. And so I would drive to B&A every Sunday, hop a Southwest flight to somewhere in Texas, and then I would ping around Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, you name it, doing sales, come back on Friday, essentially do my laundry, mow the yard, fly back to Texas. I did that for like 3 years. And
This is like
2011, 2009, 2010, 2011. Wow. And it was 2011. I remember I was living way out in East Brainerd, and which was a much different Chattanooga experience than what I had when I first moved to Chattanooga for college, living downtown. And I was essentially just paying rent, mowing the yard, hitting the road. And I remember in 2011, I was like, I'm going to be a Chattanoogan. Like, this is not what I had envisioned when I moved back. And I didn't know what that really meant, but to be involved. And so back then I qualified as a young professional.
Yeah.
So I started doing like young professional stuff. I started getting involved with UTC alumni stuff, and really just kind of like putting some, just a little effort forward just to see like what would get me engaged in the community. And Chattanooga being the great city that it is, just kind of taking a step forward. Before I knew it, I had like all of these opportunities just floating my way. And before I knew it, I was super involved in the community, more so than I ever thought I'd have the possibility to do. So yeah, it's been great.
My one experience with the young professionals of Chattanooga, I think, was back maybe 2016, 2017. And I guess I technically qualified, but I showed up to a meeting, and I was definitely, I was 12 years past anybody there. And I was like, this is a one and done. But,
youngish professional.
Yeah, it was sobering, but that's awesome. So you're in the community. You're still in East Brainerd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then from there, kind of what happens from a career standpoint?
Yeah. So from there, ever since then, I've been in kind of like the communications space. Let's see, my wife and I, we started dating, it's like 2012, 2013-ish, around there. I moved closer to town when we started dating. I was living essentially over in the art district, which was a really nice place to be at that time in my life. I just kept exploring opportunities in the comms world. So just kind of figuring out with no formal training, no education in it, I'd take kind of different jobs here and there. I got into the nonprofit space, which was a great opportunity to like learn all the different parts of marketing and communications. That's where I wrote my first press release, was for La Paz, Chattanooga, on staff there. And then things really kind of started moving in the direction to where I am right now when I took a job with what was one of, at the time, kind of like the hot young startups in town when Chattanooga got fast internet, bellhops. So they were run out of the old Lamppost group. So they were the moving company, and the online moving company, the Uber for moving, if you will. And that was just a really fun place to be. I was there for about 2 years. They hired me on as just a marketing generalist. They'd raised millions of dollars, and I think they were doing what a lot of young businesses do in that stage is they just throw bodies at problems. And so they knew they needed marketing help, and so they just built out this huge marketing team. They hired me on. I get in there. There's 7, 8 other marketing people in there. Everybody's kind of just figuring their own thing out. And I kind of looked around and I was like, I think we could get a lot of wins with earned media, like positive news coverage. And Cam Duty, Matt Patterson, to this day, love these guys. I still work with them with Brickyard. And they said, sure, figure it out. And I was like, well, this is great. I can just go. And I would be embarrassed if people saw some of my first work, but I was essentially just teaching myself. And but I developed this dual-pronged public relations strategy where we focused on national media, and then we also focused on local media in all the different markets that Bellhops had a presence. So for 2 years, we were just killing it on the earned media front for 2 years.
I remember seeing you guys.
We were everywhere, and we were everywhere. We landed on average a positive media placement somewhere in the United States every day, Monday through Friday, for 2 solid years. That's everything from the Times Free Press to the front page of the business section of the New York Times, and everything in between. And so it was a super fun thing to be a part of. It was a great place because they were kind of like the startup darling in Chattanooga. A lot of people were watching them. It was a great place for me to like showcase my work. I ended up getting recruited out of there for a startup on the West Coast. I did all the work. This was before remote work was cool. I was doing all the PR work from Chattanooga for another startup on the West Coast. And then we had a huge successful launch for that startup. And then they wanted everybody to move out west. And that's when my wife, Natalie, and I, who had always talked about one day we'd like to do our own thing, I was like, my job's gone. Like, I'm not moving to Oregon. We're not going to Oregon, which is where the operations were. And we're like, we've always talked about it. We already had kind of like one client that we were moonlighting with on the side. A buddy here in town started a business, and I was kind of helping him with his stuff. And I was like, if we don't do it now, we're never going to do it. And then, so that's when we started Heed PR. So that was 8 years ago.
Yeah. So it's been 8 years.
8 years.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is amazing because 8 years ago, I'm just like praying, dear Lord, let me pay my mortgage.
That's right. Yeah.
and then we're still doing it.
I was just remembering you had a cup of coffee with the Times Free Press, right? Weren't you doing it like an editorial piece?
Yes.
I remember reading because I'm still an old man. If I get the hard newspaper every day,
I love it.
I would still get it. My wife is so thankful that they went to digital except for Sundays, and so I can remember just seeing your column, and I'd say, "Hey, I went to that guy," and it was just fun to read. And so,
there was a brief moment, kind of like trying to figure out what I'm, just throwing all the lines in the water, kind of seeing what it takes.
Yeah.
There was an old editor for the Free Press side of the paper who was going on vacation. And he said, hey, I'm going on vacation. He's like getting married or something. So I think it was a honeymoon. He said, anybody in the community that wants to like see their name in print or write something, like I'm filling up space. He literally put this in his column. Yeah. And I was like, I've got something I want to write about. So I wrote about it. And he's like, this was great. And so he published it. And then one of my friends was the editor at Nougat.com, the original Nougat.com.
Yeah. What is that now?
Nougat Today.
Okay.
So it was the original Nougat.com, and they're like, hey, if you want to do that regularly, we'll give you a weekly column. And so I started doing that just on the side. Yeah. And then Times Free Press came back a couple years later, and they're like, hey, no, we want you to do one for us. So I did that for them for another. So I think all in, it was like 5 or 6 years I wrote a weekly column. And then I ended up, another group came and asked me to write for them, and that was a syndicated deal with Cox Media, and so that was really cool because then I started getting my columns in like the Austin American Statesman, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So I started seeing my stuff elsewhere, and then I got to write for some cool magazines. But I realized really quickly, you can get your name in a lot of publications, but turning that into an actual like revenue stream that can support a lifestyle is just not really possible.
A little difficult.
Yeah. I couldn't figure out how to do that part.
Funny you mentioned the Lamppost Group, because I had so many buddies who were in logistics, are in logistics, and or got their start at Lamppost Group or with them. And I can remember saying, explain to me what that is or what those guys do. And I never got a great answer. I'm not saying it was a bad answer or a wrong answer, but there was just kind of a lot of 5 questions, 6 different answers. But I remember right as I was leaving law school in Cincinnati, I was in I think like a co-ed sand volleyball league that I wish had down here or a setup. That's if I ever get out of law, I'm going to open up a beach volleyball bar. Recreation activity or spot. Right. So somewhere on the river. Anyway, and I remember the guy saying, my buddy said, I'm in logistics. And I said, what the hell is that? Yeah. And he explained it and it made a lot of sense. And if I'd had any wherewithal that I was going to be going back to Chattanooga, I would have gotten in logistics, early on.
Yeah.
That was like 2008. And
the place for it.
I would have maybe been doing something else, but so many of my buddies in it. How did you not get into logistics, assuming you didn't?
I did not. And I think one, most of the people that get into it, they typically get into it in like the freight brokerage side. Like that seems to be like a very common
slinging freight, as they call it.
Just slinging freight, and like it is a hot box, man. They are just nonstop, just. I mean, sales mode, nonstop. Yeah. Not for me.
Because it was cool to hear how you could wear cargo shorts into the office, and you could play cornhole, and they'd have a keg on Fridays. That kind of became the common nomenclature. And then one of my buddies from high school, I remember him, running into him later, and he'd say, Zack, you can go to any college you want, but they're never going to provide a course on how to talk to a truck driver.
Sure,
and stuff like that. And so it's just it's a very nuanced area where I would love to. I wish I would have done like a 6-month run somewhere just to kind of see the inner workings, but it is a fascinating area.
I'm super grateful for. I mean, I know obviously a lot of Chattanooga's economic anchor comes back to the logistics space, but you can also see all the other things that have kind of like grown out of that. Yep. So you just take like the Lamppost Group, for example, a lot of that money came from Access America, and especially when they sold Access America, they had a lot of money that they could invest in a lot of other things. Like you look at kind of like the downstream impact of that space, and it's really remarkable what it does for a community, both in the economic, the business space, but then also just in the life of city. I mean, I think about, bellhops came from Lamppost Group, which essentially came from Access America, right? Yeah. And now I look around and I see people that I used to work with at bellhops who now are founders of their own businesses. They're business peers of mine. Some of them are clients of mine. They are now leaders of other huge businesses in town. And that's just the economic side. I mean, I was in church, 2 weeks ago. I look up at the praise band, and like one of the lead singers or the people singing up there is a guy that I used to work with at bellhops, and a guy playing the guitar is another guy that I worked with at bellhops. And I'm like, that's super cool that these guys are now investing in like these very civic, like the spiritual well-being, if you will, of a community. And I think and they wouldn't have been here if it weren't for the fact that there were jobs for them right out of college that they could get into, and they've grown and done their own stuff with. And so when we talk about like the value of like businesses growing in town that are adding a lot of headcount and creating opportunity, it's not just for the economic well-being of a city. It's for the true lifeblood of it and all the other facets too. It's really fun to see.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's something I need to remind myself on when, as I've become much more of a Chattanooga fan and appreciator, for lack of a better term. That's a great point, because it really, we always try to pride ourselves here on being a, organic local firm, because we compete with a lot of,
you guys do a great job,
out of towners. Yeah, I appreciate that. But that's good to hear that, kind kind of said in that fashion. And so let's focus on Heed for a minute. So you're 8 years running. If you want to share some of the, I'm assuming there was a couple of early struggles or things to that you've kind of morphed into, or just kind of what you've seen. Obviously, I guess COVID hit 2 years into your run. I'm sure that was interesting.
Very scary.
Just kind of share the life of Heed and what it's doing today.
Yeah. So 8 years in this last month in May, and we went from praying at night, Lord, let us pay our mortgage, to 8 years later we're thriving, and it's such a true blessing. In the early days, if you had a check that cleared the bank, I was your PR guy.
That's right.
Over the years, you're able to refine kind of what you do and what kind of work you do your best work at. I think the greatest benefit that I have is that my wife is my business partner. Natalie, she's incredible.
Yeah.
She's an incredible life partner, but also an incredible professional and business partner. And the way that we break it up is she actually runs the business. She's operations, project management. She can do all that stuff. She's incredible at it. I'm the more of the media relations, kind of traditional PR guy. The way that I frame it for a lot of people is I say that I'm the PR dancing bear and she's Ringling Brothers. Yeah. And we together kind of figure out how to make it work. And it's just the two of us. We've got a few contractors that we work with that do a lot of great work for us, that are actually people that we used to be coworkers with back in the day. So we know that the quality of work that they deliver. But we primarily work with small to medium-sized organizations, for-profit, nonprofit in the Chattanooga area. We do take kind of cool projects that come along that if they sound interesting, we'll jump on them. But we're really proud of our client roster. If I named a bunch of our clients, they are all reputable organizations in Chattanooga that are making Chattanooga a better, stronger, more connected place. And recently I was asked what our mission is, which is interesting because I'm normally asking people, tell me about your mission. I need to understand your mission, my client. Tell me your mission so I can relay that out, make you look good, right?
Core values
and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And it was for somebody who's asked that question a lot, I kind of drew a blank at first because, my mission is not so much to be a good PR guy, right? I mean, I need to be a good PR guy.
Sure.
But being such a huge fan of Chattanooga, our mission truly is to partner with great organizations that contribute to the betterment of our community. And through our work, support them to do their best work so that we are in like the strongest Chattanooga we can be. And so whether, again, it's Simpa Community Care, or Brickyard VC, or you name it, any one of our clients, Preserve Chattanooga, like these are all organizations that deliver great benefit here. And so for me, it's an honor and a privilege that they trust us as their partner. And it is a fun way for me to kind of put my work into a space where I can see it's contributing to a rising tide, lifting all boats.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned your past job of selling shoes at Dillard. We have a running joke, and my wife will probably listen to this, and she'll appreciate the joke because she tells it too. Is that way back when I'd always say if my wife and I had to work together, I would just go sell shoes in the mall, take my lunch break in the food court, et cetera. So that's kind of been this running joke. Thankfully, we've been able to find a balance here where my wife has been really good on the swag purchasing and things of that nature, and also has a knack with some of the billboards. It has come down to a good-natured fight. The ones that are successful, that hit harder, there's been a tug of war over who gets credit for the idea, her or me on the billboard. You can imagine who's winning that argument, mainly so, right. But overall it works. I'm curious how the yin and yang works with you and your wife, as far as and I don't want to get too in the weeds on this, but I would imagine, let me ask you this question: how do you kind of keep work separate from just entering the conversation all the time at home?
Well, that's impossible, honestly. Sure. People are like, oh, well, how do you break it up? How do you keep it separate? And honestly, it's what we do, right? So there's not a hard stop on, business. It's one of these more like if we're walking the dog around the neighborhood and I'm like spouting off client ideas, and Natalie is just at a point where she's like, I don't need that right now. We're just very honest, like not right now. And we've been together again for 13 or so years in our life, right?
Yeah.
So we're very like, she can say that and I don't get my feelings hurt for it or anything, or by it. And so we just essentially say, not right now, we'll get back to it. We got plenty of time to get back to this.
Great response. So I was thinking back, we were classmates, and then we were neighbors briefly several years ago, and then we're gym buddies. You'll see you and Natalie both at Fitness Central. We've now become
tennis buddies.
Thanks to John Sorrow, who we may get on here at a later date.
Oh, you got to get him in here.
And so, but then I think our true connection has been UTC Mocs basketball.
Yeah.
So who's taking credit on that fandom, you or Natalie?
Well, I can take credit on introducing that variable, but she is just diehard. I mean, diehard. So when we first started dating, I was living in the art district, essentially 2 blocks from the arena, and hardly had 2 nickels to rub together, at that time. My bank account was very slim. But I did have enough money to get, and this was back in the Schulman era, did have enough money to get the cheapest season tickets. And so that was like date night for us a bunch, was we just walk over to the arena. And that kind of like started her fandom. Now, that wasn't the very beginning. Her father's a huge sports fan. Sam, the best father-in-law you could imagine. He trained her on all the right stuff. College sports, classic rock. She's like how to be a handy woman around the house. Like she was like, Sam hooked me up tremendously as a father-in-law before I even entered the picture. But she jumped really hard into the Chattanooga Mocs basketball stuff. And so that's our big thing now. I mean, we love November to March is just such a fun time of the year for us, between going to the games, road games, going to Asheville for the SoCon tournament. We have a core group of friends that we see at all the games and have a blast with. It's just like this, the sport is fun. We cheer for the team. We like to wear the Power C.
Sure.
But really what makes it so fun is all the people that come with it, the social side of it.
Yeah, that was what was really refreshing for me, because I had grown up as a what you call a mock maniac. They had a kid fan club program, and so my parents got season tickets for a while back during the Mac McCarthy run when it was just nuts, and I was too young to appreciate our home court advantage. Really, how good we were just on the national scene, how good Mac was in that program, and so it kind of, when Mac left, my fandom kind of stalled a little bit just because other stuff was coming in, and then I kind of high school, we'd get buddies together and carpool and go see them play. And then really my fandom kind of came full circle, I guess, later on as we started getting season tickets when I was with the firm. And my son, really embraced him as well. And so one of my all-time favorite fun memories was this NIT run we had a year ago. And there's an iconic picture where last minute my son and I decided to come up to Indianapolis for the game. We barely make our flight in Atlanta because of weather and Delta. It was hilarity. But we get in, and then we're at the game, and I think we could do a whole podcast to that season and really that night. But I thought we were pretty overmatched physically, talent-wise against, remind me, it was Loyola, and we just come clawing back, and then Honor Huff hits the 3, and there's an iconic picture of you just with the call me hand gestures. My son's going nuts, and then we were making, I didn't realize this, but I was getting like in-game texts from people saying like, "Hey, we see you on TV, we see your son." They had panned to my son, who at the time I think was like 10. And we'd had a kind of a tough first half, and he just has his hands on his head. He's just kind of like shaking his head like he's over it, and just hilarious. But then to have that win, and really, like you said, to meet so many people in that setting. I mean, former Mocs players who I idolized, and then just contacts at the university. My wife teaches there now in the nursing program.
Oh, cool.
So seeing all that come full circle and people that you see in the community that you didn't realize were hardcore Mocs fans, that was the camaraderie was just incredible.
Yeah.
And obviously we've continued it with the Southern Conference tournament that I want to make more of an effort to
that's always fun.
kind of make a tradition on. But Eric Gray and Sorrow and so many of these people, Angela and crew, that I really am excited to meet more. I feel like you've been kind of the conduit for a lot of people in that regard. So
come one, come all.
That's right. Yeah, we really need to build it all the way around. So I've selfishly been thinking of some Mocs sponsorship, NIL deals. Maybe I'll help you kind of idea brainstorm some of that stuff. I'll let you and my wife handle that. That way y'all can battle for the credit, and I'll just sit quietly. Before we run out of time, I did want to say, what's your favorite Moc basketball player of all time? If you have one?
Gosh,
and we can go as far back or as recent as you want.
My favorite one. That's a tough one. I mean, there's been so many that I've enjoyed. I think it'd have to be these are going to be two more recent ones.
Sure.
One is this is kind of a layup answer here. Honor Huff. Just an incredible human, an awesome talent. The fact that we got to see him here, the fact that he came here and he gave up a lot to come here, having to sit the bench for a whole year.
Yeah, do the whole transfer
rule within the conference, and then figuring out a way to stay, and he delivered. And I'm glad he got the chance to go up to the next level.
Yeah.
So I'm happy for him. But then another guy, I think this is probably one of the last of the program guys, AJ Caldwell. Love that guy. He's still with the program. And I just remember, he came on as a freshman, stayed all the way through. He, got a Southern Conference championship along the way, got to play in the big dance. And one of my favorite things was during the, his senior night, all the families are about to go on the court with the players to be introduced, and everybody stands up, gives them an ovation, all that. My wife and I are walking through the lower level at the arena, and he's there with his parents. And I just had to go out of the way and just go to his mom and say, thank you, for letting us have this guy for 4 years. You did an incredible job with this guy. And just having those old program guys, people who invest in the program, fans rally around them. You can see they're great kids. Like, those are the people that hopefully that's not a completely dead breed, but but those are special folks. And I love AJ and Honor both.
Yeah, that's a great, both are just hard to argue with on those players. Wendell Francis was a guy way back in the late 80s that I remember that I had met at one of those, camps, and just kind of developed a childhood fandom for him. He was great. Went on to, I think, play some Europe ball way back in the day, and did really well. I'd love to know what he's doing now. Hopefully he's still with us and thriving. But then, funny you mentioned Caldwell. He was one of my favorites, definitely probably my most favorite from a recent standpoint, because he plays that elusive point forward position that I always love. My son kind of plays that. And I remember seeing him play early on. He might have been a freshman or a redshirt freshman, I can't remember. But I remember going to like a Thanksgiving family get together, and my uncle, who is a diehard Mocs fan, was the one that really probably got my family into the season ticket scene. I remember telling him, hey, this Caldwell kid, I think he's got something. Yeah, you wouldn't maybe think it just on the front end.
Not the flashiest.
Yeah, and you're going to look and say, well, he's not that tall or he's not that big or whatever. But I said, this guy's going to be I think a key piece for a long time. Yeah, and
still is.
Well, that's right, and obviously still with the program and the administration. So you're right. Love to have those guys that are just kind of just organic. Lifers. I know with not to knock anybody in the transfer scene. I understand NIL is a real thing.
It's a different land.
The ones that you feel like the power C is kind of tattooed on them. It just kind of gives a different meaning. So, well, just to wrap up, Heat PR relations is just killing it. 8 years in. Yeah. What's the best way for somebody to find you?
Yeah.
I know you're visible, but
Yeah,
I'll let you get
I'm
that spiel.
visible. Yeah, I mean, our website is heedpr.com, as in take heed, heedpr.com. And I'm easy to find around town. I don't try to hide at all. I'm out there a bunch. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anybody that needs PR advice or really just a connection in Chattanooga, I can't think of anybody better to reach up than David Martin. David, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks
It's been
for
a
having
pleasure,
me.
And really, really excited for Mox basketball.
Absolutely.
Thanks again.